Good afternoon, everyone. How's it going? I got something on my mind about the Seattle Seahawks. The moves that the team has made over the last few days have kind of got me thinking about something here. And I'm going to try to bring a little bit of optimism to the table here. I know that the Rams just won the Super Bowl, and I know we didn't even make the playoffs. I know that sucks. Not a lot of optimism to go around right now. First losing season in 10 years, etc., etc., etc. But I want to talk about the plan. Because over the last year, maybe even year plus, one thing that I was kind of critical about when it came to the Seahawks and the way they were doing their business was it didn't seem like they had a plan. And it's one thing to have a plan that I don't agree with or a plan that I don't think is going to work, but it's entirely another thing to not have a plan altogether. And with the way the 2021 season played out for the Seahawks, it just felt like we didn't have a plan. But in light of some of the things that have happened over the last, maybe you could even say few months, but mostly the last couple weeks since the offseason started for the Seahawks especially, maybe there was a plan and it just wasn't quite going in the direction that I imagined. So we're going to go back in time here. We're going to start with some of the things that were done last offseason. And we're going to see if we can kind of figure out the way in which this team was thinking about things. And before I get into all this, I do want to say one thing. I'm not 100% sure that the plan that I'm currently seeing with this team was the right plan, that it's a good plan. There's certainly no guarantee that it works, but I go after this organization for the mistakes they've made like nobody else. So if there is some area where I need to give them some credit, I want to do that. I don't want to just be the guy who does nothing but criticize and complain. I want to be the guy who gives credit where credit is due. So there was a quote from Pete Carroll a few days ago about the firing of Mike Solari, and it kind of got me thinking about something. And like I said, we're going to be stepping back to the offseason last year, so about a year ago. But let's start here. So after Solari got fired, the quote from Carroll was, "Mike and I agreed that parting was right for our continued offensive transition." So not that Solari is bad, which I agree with. I don't think he's bad at all. But that it was right for our continued offensive transition. And I want that phrase to be the focal point going forward. So last year, the Seahawks had statistically one of their best years ever offensively. And then they fired their offensive coordinator because the offense went to crap in the second half of the season and it didn't show up for the playoff game. And it had been figured out. It would pretty clearly it had been figured out. They hadn't played well in most of their games in the second half of the season. They had like one good game against the Jets, and that's it. So at that point, because 2020 ended the way that it did, with the team falling apart in the second half offensively, and with the team going one and done after a division-winning season, I and many others felt like 2021 needed to be a put-up or shut-up season, especially when the Wilson trade rumors started. Even after the Wilson trade rumors got squashed, I and many others felt like, well, if you're not going to trade Wilson after all this negative buzz, you need to go all out to make 2021 the best season that you can. Despite that, and I talked about the difficulty here at the time, but maybe I wasn't giving this enough credit, we hire Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron had never been a play caller before. He had never been an offensive coordinator before. He had a relatively short, if impressive, resume, and probably wouldn't have been the guy that you would hire if you were thinking we need to win right now. And that's something that I talked about a little bit last offseason when we hired him. I did say that you got to give this guy some time to implement his plan. You got to give this guy some time to figure out how to work with these players. Not only because he's new to us, but because he's new to play calling in general. And what I said at the time was that's a little inconsistent with this idea of going all in for 2021, trying to keep Wilson here, trying to save this regime. But maybe the right way to look at it was this organization was not looking at 2021 in the way that I thought they would, where I thought they were going to treat 2021 like the all-in year. In hindsight, it's starting to seem like maybe they were treating 2021 as a transition year. This quote right here addresses that specifically. Parting with Mike Solari was right for our continued offensive transition. Now, the guy that is replacing Solari is Andy Dickerson, who was brought in last year from the Rams along with Waldron. Presumably, Dickerson, now in full control of the offensive line, is going to transition to a blocking scheme and offensive linemen more suited to the Waldron offense. Quicker, more mobile, more agile offensive linemen. So last year was treated as a transition where you bring in Dickerson and slowly work him in, but Solari still controls the ship for one more year. So basically what you had was a offense being helmed by a brand new play caller, brand new offensive coordinator, rookie at both, and an offensive line coach who breeds road grade run blockers. That's what he had success with here in Seattle before. The guys like the DJ Flukers of the world. Guys who were road graders in the run game. Guys who were not necessarily the greatest pass blockers, not the most agile players. Guys who would just line up across from their guy and run them over. I think that the guy who best represented that mentality was, shoot. I'm sorry, guys, I'm blanking on his name, but the offensive lineman who ended up going to the Ravens. I cannot believe I'm having a senior moment. I am nowhere near the age of being a senior citizen. That is whatever. Okay, fine, we're moving on. But anyway, so that is not a formula that you would expect to create tremendous results. And maybe the team was ready for that. Now, when you combine that with the fact that if you take a look at the defense, you kept Ken Norton, but as the season went on, you started to transition from that cover 3 defense that Carroll runs to more of a Vic Fangio style of defense, which is a little more cover 2, little more disguising what safeties do pre-snap, little more playing your defensive line in, especially on rundowns. There are a couple other wrinkles to it, but that's the basic gist of it. So as the year goes on, you transition from the style of defense you've been running for a long time to this new style, keeping Ken Norton and most of your defensive coaching staff in place. So you're doing all these things differently with the team in 2021, and you're doing it on the fly as time goes by through the season. So maybe this team decided, you know what, 2021... It's not going to be the year. The Rams are all in to win right now. Let's not go head-to-head with them because they always beat us anyway. The Niners are going to be good. The Cardinals are going all in as well. Let's treat 2021 as a gap year, a bridge year between the old and the new. And I'm not saying that was a great idea. But when you combine everything I just said about the offense and the defense with the fact that this team was relatively passive, although not bad, but passive in free agency, and left $13 million in cap space on the table for no particular reason other than to bring in guys like Adrian Peterson when the season was already over, it starts to feel like the team just decided that 2021 was not the right time to push. Now, is that a good plan? I'm not so sure. To me, you have a franchise quarterback at the tail end of his prime. You got to go for it. You got to, at the very least, spend all your money. Leaving that $13 million, I can't justify it. I also can't explain why you would do that and then use the void years to wipe out most of that rollover. Because we had close to $10 million in rolled over cap. I'm wiped out because of void years in this season. So I don't know why you would bust out the void year trick and then decide, you know what, this offseason we're going to sit back. We're going to chill. We're just going to, I think the plan may have been, let's just try to make the playoffs and win 10 games. If we get hot at the end and make a Super Bowl run, that's awesome. But our goal is to just be a playoff team. And we very possibly would have been a playoff team if Wilson didn't get hurt, admittedly, right? Because that was a significant part of our problem this season. We probably would have gutted out 10 games if Wilson never got hurt. Okay, fine, whatever. But I don't know if that's the right plan or not to have when you have a franchise quarterback, especially with what happened at the end of 2020. You could have done things a little bit differently. You could have said, okay, we're going to hire a guy like an Anthony Lynn or a Jim Caldwell who is going to be able to come in here with a lot of experience, quickly implement an offense that works well, and will get you to solid, maybe not amazing, but solid results pretty early in the season. And then on defense, you could have gone, let's just keep trying to do the same stuff we've been doing. Let's change it a little bit, obviously, but we could have been doing a lot of the bare front stuff that we did at the end of 2020, but we decided not to do those things. We brought in an untested, unproven rookie play caller in Waldron. We left him with an offensive line coach who was not really a good fit for the Waldron offense. And on defense, we morphed as the season went on from one style of defense to another style of defense. And combine that all with the offseason, where we left $13 million unspent, maybe the plan was just, okay, 2021's not the year. Maybe they had some assurance from Wilson that he was going to at least be somewhat understanding of that. I don't know. If I were Wilson, I would not be understanding of that, but maybe there was some sort of mutual agreement that let's try to hit a home run with a guy like Waldron rather than try to hit a single with a guy like Lynn. Let's try to get somebody who could be the next Sean McVay rather than somebody who's just going to be good. But that's going to take time. 2021 is going to be kind of an experimental year. And if that is the case, even if I don't totally agree with the plan, and even though I don't know if the plan is going to work yet, it is a plan. So what do you guys think? In hindsight, with the way you're seeing things go, with Carroll now moving on from Solari, we now have Dickerson as our offensive line coach, and he presumably is going to do things the Waldron way. We moved on from Norton, and now we've brought in two Fangio guys in, well, not Donatel, but we tried to bring in Donatel, Desai, and we promoted Clint Hurt. Now we're going to be really doing things in the Fangio way. And we also have a ton of cap space we can utilize this offseason to reinforce the roster. Maybe the plan was always 2022. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I don't know if that's doing right by your franchise quarterback who you floated the idea of trading that offseason. I feel like if you're going to be patient and kind of take a year off almost, you're in some ways obligated to move some of your aging veterans because they don't want to be part of something like that. But the way things are going this offseason so far, it does make me kind of wonder if maybe there was a concerted effort on the organization to say, okay, 2021, we're going to experiment. We're going to see if this stuff can fly, but we know we're not going to be amazing because we're doing all this new stuff. 2022 is the goal. We'll see if it works out when the season starts, but at the moment, how do you guys feel about that being the plan? Because moving on from Solari, who was pretty good, makes me think that there was some sort of long-term plan here where you transition as the year goes on to different things, and then in 2022, you bring in all the stuff for the full transition. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'm out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. And more off-season stuff coming.